Hello and welcome to the Academy of Doctoral PAs podcast series. This podcast series is intended to give a glimpse into current doctorate PAs and their professional capacities. In addition, this podcast series is meant to give an overview of the different options for doctorate degrees for those considering the doctorate PA route. So today we are going to have a discussion with Dr. Wes Johnson from Samford University on the ADPA podcast about what it is to be a doctorate PA. Thank you very much, Dr. Johnson, for joining us today. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Wes Johnson. I'm currently a professor at Samford University, going into my third year this year. Prior to that, I worked ER for about 7 or 8 years exclusively. Was a respiratory therapist before that. Went to UAB for undergrad and grad school, and then got a doctorate of health sciences from AT Still University. So mostly just teaching these days. Clinically, I do a little bit of urgent care work. I kind of left the ER behind, and I still get some of the kind of blood, guts, and fun stuff with the military. I'm a military PA as well. I work for the 20th Special Forces group now.
Interesting. So it sounds like you're pretty busy with both the military and then with your occupation as a professor as well.
A little bit, yeah.
I can understand. So what makes you so awesome as a doctorate PA?
Oh, I don't know if I'm awesome, but I get to do something I love. So I really enjoy teaching. It's kind of my passion. So as I was working ER, I took a job with a larger company, wound up kind of working my way through the ranks, and eventually took an administrative position with them doing kind of a clinical role. I was kind of over the scheduling and the curriculum for all the students that came in, paramedics, MDs, PAs, med students. Over the years, I wound up liking the students more than that. I enjoyed working with the patients, and so kind of tailored my career that way. Decided to get a more of an academic type doctorate and eventually transition into school.
How did you make the decision to become a doctorate PA?
So I went, I think, a different route than a lot of people go. I didn't always know I was going to end up academic world. I actually started working on my doctorate because of my ER administrative job. So I was having to do a lot of statistics, looking at research, building curriculums, things like that. And I just noticed a lot of the management teams were either MDs or PhDs or had various doctorates in business and things of that nature. So I kind of looked around at, what could I do? I don't want to go back to school full time. I've got a wife and a kid and a bucket full of student loans. So I was looking at things I could do part time, but would also help me with the administrative career. Wound up finding the DHAC through a couple of friends, did some investigations around different programs, and landed on AT Still and decided to go there. Eventually used that to make a jump into academics, but originally it was just going to be for more of a clinical administrative role in the ER.
So to make sure I understand correctly, when you were working in the ER, you decided that to be an administrator, you were going to need a doctorate degree.
Just to get higher in the administrative role. So I started off as a site director. As I progressed through my doctorate, they kind of got word, okay, he's doing a lot of statistics for us. Some of the classes I was taking really helped out, learning how to use IBM, SPSS, some of the things the administrative roles needed. I wound up getting promoted to regional director in North Alabama and just kind of progressed that direction. And so that was my original goal, was just to use it to kind of climb the ranks of administration.
Do you think that you could have climbed the ranks of administration where you were working without having the doctorate degree? For reference, do you think that, say, having an MBA would have been sufficient, or really did you need the doctorate?
So I don't have an MBA myself, so I don't know what all goes into the MBA programs. I know for me, I didn't know enough about statistics to do the job I was doing until I went back to school. I didn't know how to run like chi-square tests or ANOVA, a lot of the things that needed to be run to turn in to certain boards or companies to look at some of our processes in the ER. So for me, I had to go back just to learn that sort of thing.
So tell me how becoming a doctor at PA has impacted your career in a positive way.
It's been very positive for me. Initially it was just kind of moving up in the company I was with, and then as I realized, hey, I think my path lies more in academics. When I came to this university, I was able to come here as a tenure track professor, which a lot of my colleagues didn't have that opportunity. They're clinical professors, but they don't have the option to go up for associate promotion or for tenure like I did. Um, this university requires a research-based doctorate to do that, and when I got here, I was able to just start off tenure track.
So let's go back to your statement about the tenure track versus the clinical professor track. So are you saying that your other PA colleagues with master's degrees can't have a tenure track, or are you saying that other degrees like the clinical doctorate of medical sciences, they wouldn't be eligible at your institution for a clinical or for tenure?
So, master's degree, no, it's not an option. I honestly don't know about the DMSC because we haven't had a person that has applied with it. So that would be up to the tenure board to review. I know a little bit about that program, but it would just depend on whether or not they decided that whatever research courses met the criteria for them. And every university has their own decisions. Like a DHSC, which is what I have, would probably not count towards tenure at an R1 university. Those are usually PhDs only. So it just depends on your specific university and what their tenure board grants eligible for tenure criteria as a terminal degree.
So you've told me a little bit about how the doctorate degree has helped your career in a positive way, both when you were in the ER and now as a professor at Samford. How has the doctorate degree potentially negatively impacted your career?
I can't think of any. It didn't affect me whatsoever, but I know that there are. I did have some colleagues at one point who were almost irritated that I was going back to get a doctorate. I think in their minds it was a waste of time. I could have cared less what they thought. That's on them, not me. So for me personally, no, it's only had positive effects.
Well, let's go a little bit into student loans. A big question that I've had regarding the doctorate degree is how to fund it. So tell me how you funded it.
Military. Yeah, honestly. So most of my loans are being paid back by the Army. I paid as I was going through school. I kind of had an idea of how much I was going to be able to use with the military bonuses that some of the healthcare providers get. So I paid some of it off as I went, just by semester, and some of it I just rolled over, and now I'm paying it back with the health promotion loans that the Army grants to providers.
So for some of the people maybe listening that don't have an in with the military and the potential payback from them, how would you suggest that they go about looking to fund a doctorate degree?
I think that you should look at any degree or school as anything else as kind of a risk versus benefit thing. So, will it benefit you in the long run? Will it change your pay? Do you think it'll help your career? If it does any of those things, then it's looked at like an investment, right? The same reason why you took out loans for PA school is to increase your career. I mean, even if I wasn't doing military, I would still be making more after paying my loans than I would have just staying in RT. So for me, that was an investment. That's how you should look at any doctorate program. Do you think it will benefit your career in some way or another? And if it does, you make the investment. You figure out if you can financially take this. Ideally, you pay it off as you go. If you can go part-time and do it that way, just go part-time.
So to clarify, you have seen in your own career a pay increase as a direct result of having the doctorate degree.
For me, yes.
Okay. If you could, to the best of your knowledge, explain to me the differences between the different doctorate degrees that are currently available for PAs.
Sure. I mean, so a PhD is available if you meet certain criteria. I looked into some PhD programs. There's a lot of them out there. You can do PhDs in applied sciences. There's a PhD in health sciences if you want to go that route and do a dissertation as opposed to an ARP. The thing that they always kind of told us in school was, PhDs prepare you to be kind of theoretical learners, whereas some of the clinical doctorates, like a DHSC, more prepares you to be a clinician who has research in mind. DHSC, it's available to PAs, but it's not a PA specific doctorate. The DMSC, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, is solely for PAs and is really the next terminal degree in a PA education. And I don't know how much research the DMSC does. I don't know if it culminates in like a research project or if it just incorporates research courses into it. That's kind of the big difference. Like I said, with a PhD, it's a culmination of that dissertation. DHSCs, you have to culminate with that applied research project. I think the DMSC is really focused towards a more administrative or leadership type PA specifically. Like I said, you can correct me if I'm wrong on the DMSC portion, but that's kind of my understanding of the breakdown. And then if you're really wanting to go into education, there's also the EDD, so Doctorate of Education, which also has a research component, but it's really geared towards a career in higher ed.
Well, great, thank you. I would probably just add, for those of us that are listening, that the current PA DMS degrees are specific to PAs, meaning that if you're going to get one, you have to have a PA degree to get a PA master's degree to get into it. And then right now, this may change in the next 12 to 18 months, but right now there's no specific core curriculum. So what you will find in one DMS program varies significantly from that of another, even at the same school. So take Lynchburg, where I graduated, you can do an education tract or you can do a fellowship tract, which is clinical. And even from school to school, you'll find a difference between the DMS. If you choose Butler or Lincoln, LMU, you'll find that there is a lot different structure in the coursework within that curriculum. You'll find that LMU or Butler is a lot more heavy in terms of clinical coursework as opposed to, say, Lynchburg, which is probably, depending on the track you go to, administrative or leadership oriented. So right now, I would say that there is a lot of differences that you can get depending on the course that you choose to go to, and even the school that you choose to go to. But that may change in the future as ARC is looking into requiring accreditation or core curriculum for the different programs. Did you have a struggle in your decision to attend school, a doctorate program?
I did, yeah. It wasn't long after I'd finished PA school that I decided to go back and do my doctoral work. Part of it was I knew if I didn't just go ahead and do it, I was never going to. Just because it was such a big commitment, such a time commitment. There was a financial aspect of it. I mean, I had a pretty good plan in mind, but there was still, that financial commitment, and there was just time. Like I was gone a lot for the ER, and I had a young daughter at the time, and before my program ended, I had a son, and so deciding time management, I was working crazy hours in the ER. So my wife and I talked a lot about it and kind of, all right, well, if you do this, what is, your end goal? And my end goals changed by the end of the program, but I still had an idea of why I was going back to get this. It wasn't just, well, I just feel like I want a doctorate. No, there was a plan in place to actually go back and do it. But still, putting that initial application, I was like, I really want to do this. I just finished PA school, which is a monster in and of itself.
I can imagine. So you touched on this just a moment before about discussing it with your wife. What kind of, once you actually entered the program, struggle or conflict did you have regarding the program?
It was time management. 100%. It was figuring out because in the ER we don't have any set schedule, so it was really making sure I set time aside to meet deadlines for writing because most of what you do in the DHSC it is a lot of writing, and so after that first semester I realized that I was just not time managing very well. So I kind of had to get a calendar and like really set aside time. Okay, this block today for 2 hours, I'm locking myself in my office. But when I'm done with this, I'm going to come out and hang out with my family and do my stuff for the ER, do my clinical stuff. And it was really just making sure I had my weeks very well planned. And, when I was writing my ARP, I had more time I had to plan. And I just had to tell my family, hey, look, I just got to get this finished. And they understood. And I think as long as you're able to, you know, keep your time on track, which is the same thing I preach to my students now. Just give yourself time to hang out and be a family member, have friends, but at the same time, have a good balance there and just make yourself spend however long you need to spend to get your work done.
So, speaking of getting your work done, in a given week, how much time would you say that you blocked off to do your doctorate program?
It depended on the class. So there were some classes that were easier or more time consuming than others. So that year was a lot more, even more so time management because it wasn't like I have to be in class at these times. I have to meet this deadline on time, which I'd never gone to school online before. And so that was a little bit of a struggle at first just to make sure, like, 'cause I'm a procrastinator by nature. I'm just bad about it. I procrastinate.
So, for those of us who are listening and thinking about doing a DMS program or DHS program or whichever doctorate program, um, having had the experience of an online doctorate versus in-class PA school, how would you say they compared or contrasted?
It's apples and oranges. When you're going to PA school, for the most part, except for I think Yale, and then all of COVID, you're brick and mortar, so you're on campus, and your time is managed for you. When you're online, which is most working professionals, like I said, for me, I'm a procrastinator, so I really had to stay on top of myself and make sure that all right, they gave me the information. I'm watching the lectures as they come up. I'm getting into discussion boards. We're discussing some of these theories and laws, um, but just making sure that I made myself do it. Because if I didn't stay on top of myself, knowing my personality, I would say, well, I'll do this in an hour, and then 4 hours later, I'd be asleep on the couch after binge watching some show with my wife.
Okay. Would you say that the quality of the program was any less because it was online as opposed to a brick and mortar school?
No, not with the classes that we had. Had it been hands-on stuff, then absolutely. But with this particular doctorate, it was more, biostatistics and health law. I mean, things that we can really get, whether we're sitting in class listening or sitting on a computer and listening, doesn't really change the material.
Okay.
So for that, no.
Okay. Can you speak to me a little bit about how getting the doctorate impacted your family life while you were going through school?
It just decreased my family life.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm really that was the biggest impact because I would just have to go lock myself in my office. I couldn't hang out with my kids when I wanted to, but a lot of what I tried to do, especially on weeks where I had more day shifts in a row than night shifts, is I would just get up around 4 and work till 6 when my kids got up. That way, I didn't have that kind of parent guilt that you get when you're trying to work and your kids want to play and they're knocking on your door. And I would just try to get stuff done as early as I could, and then spend whatever time I had left with my kids. So and so I had some short nights, but you only get one childhood, so I tried my best to hang around before they got old and didn't care anymore.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you think the ADPA has to offer our profession?
Yeah, so I think the goal of the ADPA is good, right? Whether you want to call this degree creep or not, whether you agree that PA should have doctorates or not, that's really a moot point at this point in the game because other programs have them. PTs, OTs, the nursing corps. Look, they are doctorate level professionals now. And if we want to continue having seats at the table, with administrative positions and some of the higher ed positions, you're just going to have to accept the fact that some PAs are going to want to go for a little bit more. You don't have to agree with it, but I am 100% against people who slam their colleagues for wanting to further their own education. And I think that ADPA has done a really good job of making that point that, look, we don't want this to be the entrance level degree, but if you want a terminal degree, here are some resources we have to offer. Here's how we can help you with your career. And I think for PAs interested in going that route, not that they have to, but if you're interested, I think the ADPA is a good resource to look out to and join and get active and see how can this help my career in the future.
Well, great. Thank you for that. So some people have said that there's an inherent bias with a doctorate degree. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
I think having any terminal degree will open doors for you. Whether that be a PA-specific doctoral degree, whether that be PhD, DHSC, having a doctorate will open doors that sometimes will not be open. As a PA, may you get some pushback from certain groups just for the fact that you have one, maybe a little bit. That shouldn't be a deterrent because it opens significantly more doors than it closes.
Do you think that PAs that don't have a doctorate degree will have a harder time getting those opportunities or a seat at that table that you mentioned earlier?
From what I'm seeing, it may become an issue. And I'm not saying that is not a possibility. I just see more and more of these upper level administrative positions going to people with doctorates, especially as the DNP and PhD nursing has become so popular. Some of these upper level positions are just going to go that direction. If you want to work in education, you just about have to have one if you want to go higher, right? As a professor, by all means, you don't have to have one to be a PA professor, but if you want to kind of rise in the ranks, making chair or dean or something like that, then it is a requirement. It's not a want or wish. You have to have one to progress.
So in what you just mentioned about the DNPs, which is a Doctor of Nursing Practice, how does that conflict with PAs or doctorate PAs?
I don't know that it conflicts with the doctoral PAs, but I do think that from what we've seen, I don't know nationwide, but in some of our areas, them having doctorate level education does allow them to move into more of the administrative roles. And I think as more PAs now can come and say, well, I have an equivalent degree, that's not going to be an issue when it comes to getting those seats.
And that brings our discussion with Dr. Johnson about his route to becoming a doctoral PA to a conclusion. If you would like to hear more from the ADPA and future podcast series, please subscribe to our channel. If you would like to become a part of the ADPA, please visit our website at padoc.org. The website contains up-to-date information and news on the PA profession, as well as specific information for doctorally trained PAs. Thank you for listening to this podcast series.